My presentation today is on how to use science toys, the special techniques that are required for operating different kinds of toys that require special techniques. For the Levitron Omega, we need to hold the spindle straight down the line of the finger. So if you'll take the magnet and hold the spindle straight down the line of your finger, then pinch tight with your thumb, press into the middle of the plate, and raise your elbow high. It is only a snap of the fingers to spin the Levitron Omega. Let yourself have 20 practices because that often is necessary. We pop it up to a ½ inch, stop there and tilt. Now that is not included in the instructions that come with the Levitron Omega. From that point, we go up as slowly as we can to let it float in the air. Some of the special things that are required in operating this are all explained in the instructions. We use the large washer weights, smaller washer weights, 3 grams, 1 gram, 0.4, 4/10, 0.2, 2/10, 0.1, 1/10, and the little rubber grommets that hold it on, the little O-rings. So in operating this, as opposed to the original Levitron, the one with the square base, used wedges to level it, but we will adjust this while it's in the air. I may knock it off, but watch. We'll tilt it slightly to the side. Here, I'll do it again. We will tilt it using the adjustable thumb screws that are built into this. So, like a marble that is always rolling off to the side of a table because the table's not level, if I have a marble rolling off in this direction, I know that the table is not level, and the marble rolling this way, I need to drop this end down or raise this end up. With the original Levitron, we had to use the wedges to level this. With the Levitron Omega, we use these adjustable thumb screws. And this is behaving a little funny, so let's talk about something else involved with all magnetic toys. All magnets are weaker when they're warmer, stronger when they're colder, but weaker when they're warmer. So I've just taken off 2/10 of a gram, put on 1/10 of a gram, because I've warmed this up with the heat from my hand. We just got through turning off the air conditioner in here, and so the temperature is rising in addition to the heat from my hand. So if you ever have a problem with one that has been floating just fine, you had a little trouble, suddenly it wouldn't float, we've just lightened it up. So the tricks in operating this, if it is too heavy, it won't float. Just now it fell right back down. If it's too light, it flies away. So it is best when you first get started to put on extra weights, try lifting it up, and then taking weight off until it's light enough to float. The Levitron Omega. It's a cool toy. Next, let's look at something very simple, Silly Putty. With Silly Putty, the only thing you really need to keep in mind with Silly Putty is that if I lay this on the carpet down here and leave it there, as it is a slow-moving semi-solid, kind of like a semi-liquid, it will flow. Every time you open up a Silly Putty container, whatever shape you've made with sharp corners, it will have formed a little blob of a little pool in the bottom of your Silly Putty container. Yes, it does bounce like a super ball. It stretches like taffy. You can use it to lift off the Sunday comics. The ones in Santa Fe work pretty well. Silly Putty. Diving submarines. Now this is a super toy. Filling the diving submarine up with baking powder as opposed to baking soda. Baking powder as opposed to baking soda. You can operate the diving submarines diving up and down for about 20 to 30 minutes, but you need to use something soft, like a toothpick, giant toothpick there, like a toothpick or a plastic pen cap, not something metal, as if you scratch the seal, it will no longer form a seal and all the bubbles will leak out and it won't continue to dive up and down. If you take care of it using something soft, you can use them over and over again hundreds of times. Boomerangs. This little indoor boomerang, there are different kinds of models of indoor boomerangs. They all work under the same principles, but our technique is this. If you're throwing right-handed, the flat side of the boomerang goes to your right. Left-handed, the flat side of the boomerang goes to your left. My left here, the left. The boomerang is taken, cocked back, so that you can get a little bit more spin as it's thrown, and tilted about 45 degrees to the angle from vertical away from horizontal. And you're giving it a soft, just a soft flick, like a 3-year-old's flick. A 3-year-old and over can throw this boomerang. But if you throw it too hard, you won't be able to operate it. You'll end up wandering around and chasing your boomerang around. So a soft flick, tilt it to the right. When you first get these, when they're brand new, as they will show on the instructions, you cup them upward. They will tend to spring back when they're brand new. You repeat that just to break them in. Now let's talk about outdoor boomerangs. This is a much more important thing with several safety points. With outdoor boomerangs, make sure that you only ever throw a boomerang with a vertical orientation. Never, ever, ever throw a boomerang sidearm, because just as we demonstrated here, throwing with a vertical orientation, it circles back around and comes to us. Life is good. Thrown with a horizontal orientation, instead of it circling around like the ring I'm making with my arms, it would loop upward and come barreling down. If you're lucky, you'll just break your boomerang. So, having said that, we'll face into the wind. With a right-handed boomerang, we'll turn about 45 degrees to the right of oncoming wind and only throw these in low winds in an open space, away from other people, animals, especially dogs. Having said that we throw it with a basically vertical orientation, only tilt a model like this to the right about 10 or 15 degrees. Never, ever, ever throwing it sidearm. With this model, you're giving a quick, to the right of the wind, 45 degrees. Instead of throwing straight upward, throw towards the tops of the trees off in the distance, tilt to the right about 10 or 15 degrees. With this model, this is as strong as as hard as a 10-year-old can throw. For adults, hold back on your force, don't put your shoulder into it. This is a real throw without the release. Just a quick snap with the wrist, that's all. This would be circling around, 24-yard circle, coming up over our head, going into a hover, and then as it hovers down, the way you catch it, if you're trying to catch it, you don't have to catch it, would only be to put one hand under the center of spin, keeping your arms apart such that you can't bump your hands. Think of it like a saw blade. Only a hand into the center of spin and then make a two-handed catch like that. Boomerangs are only thrown in low winds. Here in Santa Fe, there are free boomerang lessons once a month, and all the boomerangs are provided. It's just a free, fun thing to do. But low winds and open space, and never ever throw boomerang sidearm. The next thing, as a technique, is the slinky. Imagine talking about technique with a slinky. Well, if you are 3 or 4 or 5 years old, one of the greatest tragedies is getting two ends of a slinky stuck together where they end up being overlapped. I'm not going to go through with you about how to untangle a slinky. The trick with a slinky is not to put them together, but some tricks to have fun with a slinky. If you create a slope that goes down 1 foot for every 4 feet over, a slope of 1 to 4, you can create a slinky racetrack. However long that slope is, the slinky will just continue to walk down the slope. And of course, walking downstairs. The slinky, the original slinky. Whirligigs, also called puddle jumpers, are only to be operated with the same direction of spin. This is designed for the right hand to be pushed forward. I don't think I've ever seen ones commercially made in which you push the left hand forward. So left-handed or right-handed, you only push the right hand forward. Here are the safety points. Hold the whirligig away from your face. Don't get it close. Bump yourself in the nose or toward the eyes. Tilt the whirligig away from you instead of tilting towards you, because when it takes off, it would be flying towards you. Again, going toward the nose, toward the eyes. Holding the whirligig down low on the shaft so that your thumbs aren't involved. Only push tilting forward, only push the right hand forward, but never pull the left hand back, which will pull it close to your face. If you have to, you can put your elbow to the side and only push the right hand forward to make the whirligig fly. These will fly 2 to 3 stories high the way I make them. So don't try doing things like this indoors. Don't do this near a 1 or 2-story building or trees outdoors. You can land them on much higher things than you ever would have expected when they're made in this way. And for techniques, you can also fly them upside down, spinning the same direction off of your leg, and play chopper golf at very long distances. So we can fly this very long horizontal distances by tilting them to the side, but only catching by the hand. Never catch it with it going toward your face, as if you miss, you might get it toward your eyes. The dunking bird. Are you doing your job? Yes. The dunking bird, you take them out of the box that they come in, and I don't think any of the dunking birds that I've ever seen don't work. Usually it is user error. When you take them out of the box, see he's dunking up and down here, it needs to be able to, when the head has been cooled, it needs to be able to tilt over. If it won't tilt over, you might need to, and this you'd probably want to wear gloves, because this is a glass shaft, to slide this metal frame along the glass like on a teeter-totter, the pivot point on a teeter-totter. If I have too heavy of a kid down here, too light of a kid down there, the teeter-totter won't teeter-totter, so we simply move the pivot point. If this end won't go up, we'll move the metal in this direction. If it goes down and this end won't go up, come back up, then we'll move the metal slightly back in this direction. And also you can bow the metal here, looking on it from this angle, like downward or upward, slightly, in order to make some fine-tuning adjustments. I suggest using a plastic cup instead of glass in operating these, because when the bottom swings back down, it will bang against the heavier glass, the harder glass, and this way it's just hitting something soft and plastic. You do need to have enough water for the dunking bird to be able to dampen the nose, and also to get it started, you might put some water on the back of the head just to cool it off. It is the cooling process that makes the dunking bird operate. If you have too much water, it can drip down to the bottom and not work. Also, if it's rainy and cold, the water can't evaporate from the head, which would cool the head. Cooling the head with the warmer bottom allows us to have a lower pressure in the head. A higher pressure in the bottom causes the liquid to rise up here. If it's cold and humid, the water can't evaporate, so we don't have that low pressure in the head with a higher pressure in the water in the bottom pushing up, so the toy isn't operating. Juggling, one of the most simple but entertaining activities that we can have. Juggling is only doing this over and over again. One hand. So if you want to teach yourself how to juggle, take one ball in one hand, like you were scooping ice cream, pass it from side to side, about hat brim height, just above your eyes. Scooping, that's allowing the next ball that's being passed to go underneath the path of the second ball coming. Practice that hundreds of times until you're consistent, going back and forth, back and forth. Don't worry about the catching. Juggling is about throwing, not catching. Then go to two balls, pass from one hand to the other, from right hand to left hand, then from left hand to right hand to left hand to right hand, back and forth. When we get to three balls, we are doing nothing more than we were doing with two balls. Right to left to right, right to left to right, right to left to right. And there you go. And that's what to practice. But practice over and over first with one ball, not going straight to three balls, because that throws us off. And whether they're smaller or larger, simply pick balls that are comfortable for your hands. You don't really need to get a fancy set. Ones that don't bounce, that have nice even seams, and squeeze them really, really, really hard to make sure that they're not weak and poorly made. There are a couple of different brands of magnetic construction toys. This brand, the Mags brand, has little tiny magnetic pellets that allow us to hold on to create little spinners like this. And we can actually build a spinner that is about, let's see, here we go. About maybe 4 or 5 times this size and weight. The Mags brand has powerful rare earth magnets again, but they run the entire length of the shaft. This allows us to have much stronger magnets that will hold on, allowing us to build huge spinners and also giant shapes. If I were looking through this toward a television set, the strobe effect would create a bunch of little phantom arms. That's a cool trick to learn about magnetic construction toy spinners. Some 7-year-olds and under, and some adults, have difficulty starting up the gyro ring. The technique in operating the gyro ring, I'll turn away from you. If you're holding your gyro ring from above, like this, clamp onto it with your slowest hand, use your fast hand, put the tops in the against the heel of your fast hand, and then run your fast hand across it to make them wobble. If they're not wobbling, just try again. No matter how fast they're spinning, if they're not wobbling, we can't get it to go. If we have that wobble, then start to rotate the ring to get it to go. And now, keeping it going, you can try different tricks like going from one hand to the other, one-handed. Behind your back is even harder. Now here's the trick for the giant flip. The giant flip, by the way, this is working by gyroscopic precession, like 5 hula hoops going around your waist. In order for these hula hoops to be falling down our waist, we need acceleration due to gravity. I thought, well, a 9-year-old showed me this. You can take this, flip it around end over end, keep it going as long as you accelerate it, so that we have an accelerating force to keep the tops going. If we don't accelerate, they'll stop. The giant flip with the gyro ring. By the way, this is a welded stainless steel ring, Series 300. A super powerful magnet here. It's non-magnetic. The gyro ring. The Orbitron. To operate the Orbitron to play this particular game, there are many that you can play, let it roll downhill, because things don't roll uphill too well, do they? If I have this rolling along, if I try to make it roll uphill over here, it slows down. At the top of a hill, it doesn't go very fast. At the bottom of a hill, it doesn't go very fast. But rolling downhill, it will pick up speed, going faster and faster and faster. Using our fingers to manipulate it, and I'll just let it slow down so I can control it. Using our fingers to manipulate it here, we can get better control and better speeds. Letting it pick up to its highest speed. Whoops. And there we go, spinning off. Let it go to its highest speed before flying off like that. And also don't rattle it back and forth too much. That'll also make the magnetic spindle come loose. We're doing a conservation of angular momentum here, that it wants to continue rolling. By letting it pick up speed, we can bring it up to a high speed and see how many times we can get the loop over the top. My current record is 19. 11 or better is good. And if you're getting over 16 or 17, you're rocking. That's the Orbitron. Now, here's something else. On the box it indicates that this is for a 5-year-old or over. This is the Sonic Spinners, the Supersonic Spinners. This is a top that acts as the bottom top to stack another top on top of it, which I didn't do very well there, did I? And then we'll try to stack another top on top of that, and you can get up to 5 tops spinning. And as you can see, there's some challenge to it. So yes, a 5-year-old can operate the original top, but getting up to 5 tops stacking on top of each other, that's very challenging. The technique here, once you have your top spinning, first of all, we wind this up by holding the top in our hands, pressing in with the winder, and then this button on top is used to release it. I'll show you going from the second top onto the first, then going right up above it, only leaving maybe about a quarter of an inch. Then we'll do our release and let the upper top fall into the lower top immediately above the center where there's a small pivot space in here. And those are cool, but very challenging. Now, radiometers. Let's take a look at some radiometers here. We've got some that are spinning very quickly. These very fancy European radiometers. Hand-blown glass, balanced vanes. Notice how they're able to operate much more quickly than these other models. However, all radiometers, even the cheap radiometers like this, the inexpensive radiometers, these things last for decades. Putting them in a bright light, like in the sunlight, they'll spin. But it's not just light, heat of any kind. So for example, in a cold, dark room, if you put your hands on a radiometer, you can make it spin. So, radiometers work by heat energy. Now take a look here. This had been given to me. This guy wasn't spinning at all, and he's right underneath my, what is that, a 300 watt bulb? Something. 50 watt bulb. Very bright light. Wasn't moving at all. This one had only 2 vanes in it, and you may or may not notice that on the vane on this side, there's a little planet Earth. Well, it's dark. We need something very light, black and very light, in order to have something that we expect to go very well. This only had 2 vanes. We would certainly expect 4. And with these handcrafted German radiometers, Notice that this is, it's hard to make them stop. Notice that this one is silver as opposed to white, making them very effective. Even getting these up to a very high speed, let's just put him right there. When they're cranking really fast, these highly balanced ones, now this is an exquisite handcrafted radiometer, will get to a very high speed without the wobble that the less expensive ones do. Alrighty, let's take a look at our hydrogen fuel cell car. The hydrogen fuel cell car is actually a kit in which we do 30 different experiments. How about if we do the solar cell experiment first? That's one of the ones that's in the beginning. So we'll actually run this by solar power first to show you how it operates. The way we're handling this, very carefully, if you're operating one of these little connectors are very fragile. You'll need to hold it by the connector and not pull by the wire because you'll yank the wire out quick as all get out. Now, let's see if we've got our solar setup. We did not. Solar to cell, solar to cell. Let's see here. I obviously do not have that set up right. Solar, solar, bloop, bloop, bloop. Well, I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to the hydrogen configuration. Oh, well, no, it would be nice if I had my motor set up, wouldn't it? So, motor to solar, not solar cell to motor. I'm sorry, yes. Anyway, we'll set this up running from the motor to the solar cell, and the motor to the solar cell, and then operate this in this way. There we go. So now this is under a 75 watt bulb. We're getting a little bit close here. They'll operate faster out in the sunlight than they will with the 75 watt bulbs. So you can really get these things to crank. You can adjust the angles of the solar cells. How much time do I have left? That's good. So let's go ahead and operate the motor now by the solar cell, and let's explain what is happening in this. This tank, filled with a bubble of hydrogen, the bottom of the bubble is here. So the water will rise up into this bubble. And this tank of oxygen with the bottom of the bubble here. So water will rise up into this bubble as the oxygen is used up. These bubbles of gas, motor to solar cell, disconnect. We'll disconnect our solar cell here. I wouldn't want you to think we were running this by solar now. We'll disconnect this solar cell here. So it's very clear that we're running this by the hydrogen. Now, before I connect this, what's happening is wonderful. Hydrogen gas is entering from the right-hand side of this hydrogen fuel cell, and that's what we're looking at here. There's a membrane patented by DuPont, a proton exchange membrane that only allows not a full hydrogen molecule, which is 2 hydrogen atoms, H2, to pass through, not even 1 hydrogen atom to pass through in its entirety, but only the nucleus of a hydrogen atom is allowed to pass through the hydrogen fuel cell. That membrane, that joins with the oxygen on the other side. We're again forming water with 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. However, we have a charge displacement. That charge displacement accumulates and creates the voltage, producing the current that operates this hydrogen fuel cell. But let's stop talking and start running. So now, I don't know if the camera can see well or not that the bottom of my bubble is even with the axle right here. I'll jiggle it back and forth. That's the bottom of my hydrogen bubble. As this is operating, you'll notice that this bubble will decrease in size. The water will rise up in the bottom as we're using up the hydrogen here and the oxygen there. In order to operate this, we have first used the solar cell here to create the voltage, and you could also use a battery or a transformer to create hydrogen and oxygen bubbles. You'll get more bubbles on the hydrogen side than the oxygen side. Only use low voltages, and kids, this is for parental supervision. In creating the hydrogen and oxygen that runs this, we first used the solar cell with the fuel cell to create the hydrogen and oxygen. And by the way, these crank. I did a lot of experiments with this, and the experiment, by the way, is called electrolysis, breaking water into hydrogen and oxygen with a voltage. That is the energy that is needed to separate a water molecule, which is H2, 2 times as many hydrogen. O, H2O, 1 oxygen. 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen. So when we break it up, we get twice as much hydrogen as we do oxygen. When they recombine, it takes 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom to create a water molecule, H2O. So now, you'll notice that this water level is rising because the hydrogen bubble is decreasing. And this is how the hydrogen fuel cell car works. There are many, many other experiments in which you learn about how to measure voltages, resistances, currents, the the short circuit current, the open circuit voltage, how photocells work, a p-n junction. Truly, these are excellent, but you do need to follow all of the techniques described in the book and the manual, which is excellent. It is for a 12-year-old and over. It really isn't for immature kids. And even adults will be fascinated by the complexity of this toy. They are super. But you need to follow the instructions. Oh, and also in operating these, make sure, as I said, that you're not pulling these out. And another technique, in the bottom of these connectors is a little Phillips shape crosshairs. Sometimes you'll need to take a knife and split that back open a little bit to reopen it, to make it bigger so that it isn't too loose into the holes. That's one of the problems that you encounter early on. Very easy to solve. And only use distilled water, as the manufacturer says. Otherwise, you'll end up leaving deposits in here that will interfere with the operation of your hydrogen fuel cell car. So, we have been playing with the Levitron Omega. We learned that requires a special technique in the spin, that the magnet is somewhat sensitive to temperature, although that's a small difference, and that it will take some practice, that we level it, and that we adjust the weights in order so that it's not too heavy, flies and won't float, or too heavy and flies away. Silly putty stays off the carpet. Diving submarines, we only use baking powder, and don't scratch the seal with something hard. With the fun rang, we throw at a 45-degree angle with a soft flick, but we do need to cup them upward to operate them. With a normal wooden boomerang outdoors, a boomerang is only thrown with a vertical orientation in an open field in low winds. High winds, you couldn't control it. With the slinky, make sure not to bring the two ends together. We didn't mention the world's simplest motor here, sorry. The world's simplest motor, although it's rated for an 8-year-old and over, the insulation, scraping on this and the balancing of this are challenging. So when you're looking at this, this is a toy to spend some time with. Here's a powerful rare earth magnet. We'll speed this up. But as it comes, the world's simplest motor, a very inexpensive toy, operates very well, as you can see, here, but the handling of it's a very fragile little coil. The handling of this, we can easily bend this. So it needs to be, once you've made it, you scrape your wires, you put it up, and it can be allowed to keep running for 2 or 3 days. I want to thank you. My name is Matt Hanifin with Science Toy Magic. Thank you very much. All of the toys here require special techniques, and tune in sometime and watch Science Toy Magic Demonstrations Volume 3, Weird Science. Thank you very much.